In this video we're gonna create a simple character rig. We're gonna start with the controllers, the joints, and combine it all together into one walking animal or robot, whatever we wanna call that model. And we're gonna use the Star Wars AT model that we're gonna experiment our rig on. We will start right after the intro. Today I want to share with you the way I create simple character rig. We're gonna take the simple AT tank from Star Wars. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about as soon as you're gonna see it. And we're gonna create a simple rig for it. We want it to be able to walk as we want, make a walk cycle, and hopefully I can teach you the process I do. It's a very simple process for those simple rigs that you will be able to create in a few minutes maximum. So I'm sure you're tired of seeing my face. Let's go to Maya and start rigging. Okay, so I'm going to build a character rig for this AT model from Star Wars. And as you can see, I already have this rig built. I built it before, and it's pretty simple to do it. We use some joints, we'll use some IK handles, and overall that's it. So if you see, when I change his leg, we can see all the parts rotating as they should. And if I'll bring his leg forward, his knee bends. So that's what we're gonna do. I have this simple animation I did with this rig, and we're gonna build it from scratch. It's gonna be pretty simple, as I said. Okay, so for now all we have is just this 3D model, and the only thing I did with this model when I got it, it was pretty, it was solid. It was combined to one model, so I separated everything and I split it into parts. So I have the head, neck, the torso, the body, if you will. I have those joints, the mechanical parts. Those are gonna be the hip joints for me. This is the knee joint, and that's the foot. And we have the fingers as well. Do some cool stuff with the fingers as well. We don't want to animate each finger while he lifts his leg. We want to do some animation. I do automatic animation while I lift the leg of this robot, so the fingers will bend accordingly. The first thing we're gonna do is just create a group for the 3D model. I'm gonna take the group and I'm gonna put it into a layer. And the reason I'm creating this layer is so that each and every minute I can just lock it and continue working on my joints, on the joint of this robot, or on the controllers, and I don't need to, while I select, I don't need to select accidentally some parts of the geometry. Let's start with creating the controllers first. You can do it in different orders. You can start with the joints first and then the controllers. It's a pretty simple rig, so I'm gonna do the controllers first. It's only 4 legs and the torso controller, so that's not a problem. And I know where they're gonna be located. So we're gonna create NURBS curves for the controller, and I'm gonna make them visible. So that's the curve. I'm gonna align it to the middle of his foot, and for that I need to show the wireframe. And I'm going to align it with dragging with my V on my keyboard and the middle mouse button, so it's perfectly aligned in the bottom of his foot. I'm gonna call it left foot. We're gonna do the same with the second. I'm just gonna duplicate it to this controller and align it exactly on the right foot. Again, I'm dragging with the middle mouse button. I'm gonna just change the name to front, but instead of left foot, it's right foot. Same thing exactly we're gonna do for the back of his legs. And we don't need to do it each controller at the time. You can just select the 2 front controllers, duplicate them both, and I'm gonna just drag it on the Z axis. I'm gonna align them both on one of his feet. It doesn't matter because they are both just gonna move the same exact location. And we have 4 controllers for the legs. Those gonna be right back, I think, and left back foot. I wrote front instead of foot accidentally, so I'm gonna change it on the other controllers. Okay, we have the controllers for the legs, and we're gonna create a controller for his head, neck, and his torso. That's gonna be the COG, the center of gravity. For that, I'm gonna just create another NURBS circle, and I'm just gonna put it somewhere in the middle of his torso. The most important thing is just it has to be in the middle. And keep in mind that your controllers are going to rotate according to their axis, and that means that if I want to rotate his torso up, the torso will rotate up accordingly to this point, but I want it to be somewhere here in the middle. So I don't have any geometry here in the middle. I'm gonna just do it by the feel. And let's just make a shape of this controller, so it won't be just some circle. I'm gonna do some shape to distinguish it from other controllers, something like that. I think that's gonna work. And let's create a controller for his head. Same process exactly. I'm not gonna explain what I'm doing, you just saw what I did exactly. So I'm gonna just do the same thing, only for his head and neck. I'm gonna speed forward this part. Okay, I'm done creating the controllers, and let's just give them names so we will know what controller is exactly what it's doing. So for now we just have NURBS circles. So this one's gonna be head control. I'm just gonna shorten this control word. That's the COG. Another thing, we just need to freeze transformation for all of those controllers, and that means that I have some transformation values here, and when I'm gonna try to reset those values, the controller is just gonna move back to its origin where I created it, and that's the middle of the scene. So I want, when I'll reset the controller, for it to go back to its original place here where I just positioned it. So you can select the controller, or you can select all of those controllers, hold your spacebar, modify and freeze transformations. Let's go into the option box, and we're just gonna select translate, rotate and scale. We just want to freeze all of those transformations. That means we're gonna reset all of those transformations. I click apply, and you see all of the transformations went to 0. The scale of course remains 1, because if you're gonna zero the scale to 0, it's just gonna disappear. And now you see if I move the controller and rotate it, the moment I will reset all of those to 0, it's gonna go back to its place. And for more convenient visual style, let's just give them colors, so we'll know what color it is. It's gonna be a lot easier for us to select those controllers. Checking the head controller, pressing Ctrl A to enter the attribute editor, and under the head control shape and the object display tab, drawing overrides, I'll enable override, and I'll just change this color to, let's say, yellow. Same for the other controllers. In the shape node, you can change the layer, the color of the layer. Let's just make green for the COG. Neck, let's keep it yellow as well, because it's connected to the head control. And the legs or feet or hands, usually I just do the left side in blue color and the right side in red. So you can just do whatever you want. I do it in those colors because that's what I'm used to. Okay, we have a visually nice rig here. All what's left is just one more controller to control all of them. That means the global control. And you'll see in a moment what this control gonna allow me to do. So let's go again to create NURBS circle. I'm just gonna scale this circle, and I'm gonna give it a shape, like more of an arrow type shape. Of course, there are many plugins that you can use to create controllers. I will make a video on them later on. For now, we're just creating everything from scratch. And I'm gonna again position it right in the middle of our model. Global control, freeze transformation, modify freeze transformation, and I'm gonna paint it again in some different color. Let's take this one. Nice. Okay, so we're gonna take all of those, group them together. I want the model to be exactly on the X or Z axis. Now, as you can see, the model is a bit onto the side, to the left. So in order to do that, I'll pick up the group. I just grouped everything together, and I'll center the position of the pivot, so it will be relatively to the center of everything here I have in this group. So when the group is selected, you press and hold the spacebar button, modify and center pivot. You see the pivot just jumped to the upper side, so it's right in the middle of the relative of everything of this model. The most important part is that this relative is exactly in the middle of this model of the geometry. I'm just gonna move it to the right, and holding the X button, I'm just gonna hold it, and with my middle mouse button I'll just snap the model to the middle of my grid. Okay, so now we can just take everything out of the group. So I'll just open the group here in my outliner, select everything. Shift P will extract everything from my group, and I can just remove this group, but all of the other controllers have this -7 on their X translate, and that's because we just moved everything a bit to the right. I'm just gonna select the controllers, and I'm gonna go to modify freeze transformation and reset all of the transformations of the controllers. Now all that we need to do is just to create joints and to assign each and every body part of our model to the joints. So in order to create the joints in the right position, I need to create it somewhere in the middle of each rotation joint. To do so, what I usually do is I select the circle or the middle of the controller. Let's say here, I just selected all of those vertices. I'm going to go to deform and create a cluster. So the cluster is just taking all of the vertices and putting the cluster average in the middle of all of those vertices. So it's just in the middle of my model. Same thing I'm gonna do here with this part. I'm just gonna select those 3 vertices that are in the middle of his hip. I'm gonna press G to repeat my last action, and that was to create a cluster. Same thing to the knee joint. I'm gonna select those 2 nodes because they're right in the middle, and I'm gonna create a cluster in between them. The last one is here, this joint. I just need to select this vertex and do a cluster for it. So now I just want to create the joints exactly where the clusters are. For that I need to hide my geometry. I'm going to press and hold the spacebar, show, and I'm going to deselect polygons from my show tab. And here are my clusters. They are kind of hard to see because of the coloring I have here. I just need to snap the new joints I'm creating to those clusters. So I'm going to go to skeleton, create joints, and holding my V keystroke, snap it to all of those clusters. We're going to start with this one, the hip, and go to the knee, the hip, the knee, and we can make those joints visually a little bit bigger. So we're gonna select the joint, we're gonna go to display, animation, joint size. We're gonna make them the scale of 1. Okay, now we can bring back our mesh. We're gonna select our geometry, and we're gonna just delete history, so it will delete all of those clusters we created. In order to delete history, just select all of your mesh or all of your controllers where you want to delete your history, and you go to edit, delete by type, history. Okay, and now we need some joint to be here in the middle, so we can connect all of his legs to this main joint. We're gonna pick those 4, and we're gonna select the vertices, all of those 4 mesh. I'm gonna create another cluster, and we're gonna create a joint here. And just take your hip joint and connect it to the joint we just created, the COG joint. And I just selected them both, and I'll press P, parent. And you can again delete the cluster. So now we need to create the other 3 legs, but we don't want to do the same process. It's gonna take us a long time. We can just select the hip we just created and all of its joint hierarchy, go to skeleton, mirror joints, and we're just gonna select the XY and press mirror. So we just create another duplicate right here behind, and we can change the Y to Z, and it will just bring it again to the other side, and it will bring back the XY. We have 4 joints, 4 legs created in a few seconds. What we need to do now is to connect the geometry to the joints. And here it's pretty simple. We have this joint that's responsible for that part of his leg. We're gonna select the geometry, the joint, go to skin, bind skin, and instead of bind to joint hierarchy, we're just gonna select the selected joints. Leave everything else as it is and press apply. And now when I select the joint and I'll try to rotate it, everything rotates perfectly. I'll just do the same to this part, and I'll just press G, it will repeat my last action. And I'll select this part and again to this joint. I'll repeat it the same process for all of his legs. Okay, we're done, and as you can see, when I select his joints now, everything moves as it should. Now what we need to do is to create IK handles. So the IK handle is just some mechanism that can move his leg when I move the controller. To create IK handles, I need to go to skeleton, and I have IK handle here. Select the single chain solver to do so, and just click on one side of his hip to the knee. That's gonna be one IK handle between those three joints, and we're gonna do the same. I'll just press Y to select the same tool. I'm gonna put IK handle from his knee to his foot. Now, as you can see in the outliner, I have two IK handles created. I'm just gonna take them both and put them inside the controller. So I'm just gonna select the controller and press P. So now I have the controller here and the IK handles inside the controller. And when I'll lift his leg, everything moves. I'm gonna do the same to the other legs. Okay, so we connected all of the joints and all of the IK handles to his legs. Everything moves. Now we need to connect the other controllers to the other parts of his body. So we'll just take the head and we can just put it inside the controller of his head. And as you see, the controller spins on the middle of his head. I just want to change the controller's orientation, so when I'll do the rotation, it's gonna rotate here from his neck. So in order to do so, I just select the controller, press W or translate. I'll press the insert key on my mouse button, and I'm gonna snap his orientation here to the middle. Now when I rotate his head, it rotates on his neck. I'm going to take his head controller and put it in a group. We'll call it null head, and I'm gonna parent it to his neck. And now when we'll move the neck controller, we're gonna move the head, and we're just gonna put the geometry of his neck inside the controller as well. And we have his head moving with the controller. Okay, now we're gonna take the neck controller, we're gonna group it again and make null neck, and we're gonna parent it to the COG. Now when we're gonna move the COG, everything else moves with it. We're just gonna parent his body geometry to the COG, and now everything moves together. All that is left is just to connect those joints to his body, to the COG. And this joint is gonna get parented to our main controller. And now when we'll move his COG, it's gonna move the middle joint, that's gonna move the rest of his body. The only thing that left is just to work on his fingers here. What I want to do is just whenever I translate his foot and I'll lift it in the y-axis, I want those fingers to go downwards as if gravity pulls them down. So we're gonna use drawing keys for that. We're gonna select the controller and we're gonna go to key, set, drawing key, set. I'm gonna select the controller and put it as a driver. And I'm gonna select the translate Y here on the driver. I'm gonna select the two side, left and right of his fingers, not the front and back. I'm going to load them as drivens. I'm gonna select those two. And we need them to rotate on the Z axis, wherever his leg's going down, going up. So we're gonna select the Z axis. So whenever the Y axis goes up, the Z gets the transformation. We're gonna press key, and now we're gonna translate his leg, let's say to 15. I want those fingers to translate to, let's say, 45 degrees. So this one goes to the right direction, and this one we need to do -45. And I'm gonna press key. I'm gonna reset. So now you see the fingers moving. That's what it's supposed to be, and we're gonna parent them soon to the leg, so don't worry. Now we're gonna pick the front and back of his fingers, load driven. I'm gonna select them both, and now we need to translate X whenever his legs goes up in the Y-axis. So now rotate X. I'm gonna press key, and now I'm gonna again lift his leg to Y15, and I'm gonna just write here 40, 45 degrees, and here the back finger 45 degrees negative. Okay, and now we're gonna just take those fingers and we're gonna put them inside a group, and this group is going to be parented to our foot controller. So we just can take the group and just throw it inside the foot controller. So now when I pick his leg, his fingers going to hang. All that is left to do is just to change the keyframe interpolation for his fingers. I'm just gonna select 4 of his fingers, and I'm gonna go to animation graph editor. I'm gonna select all of those keyframes and change them to linear. I want them to be affected immediately. Okay, so here is the leg, and pretty simple.
As you see, that was a pretty simple rig. As soon as you're gonna get the technique of how I did it, you can recreate this rig in about 5 to 10 minutes. There is no coding involved in this rig, or no skinning that you need to mess with. You just create controllers, you just bind the character to the joints and start moving. Pretty simple, and it's pretty awesome. Usually the best rigs are the simplest rigs. We don't want to overcomplicate the character rig because we don't want the animator to struggle with trying to understand what each controller does. The fewer the controllers, the best. So I hope you like this video, and let me know what you think about this content. I'm gonna upload more content to this channel, probably gonna be weekly. So subscribe to this channel, like this video, and share this video with someone that you think might enjoy this video. My name is Raf, I'm gonna see you next time. Bye.